what I want to do today is I'll walk you through a couple things. Derek asked me to talk about why retailers love new products, and then how to break through, how to break into somebody like Walmart. But sitting and listening to some of the conversations earlier today, one of the things I want to talk about to kind of bridge a gap a little bit. There is a distinct difference, and I know this isn't anything new, but I'm going to connect some dots hopefully, that there is a big difference between big business and small business. It's a fundamentally different world. Not right or wrong, not good or bad, not better or worse, different. And so what it takes to be successful and operate a small startup company is completely different than what it takes to be successful walking into a buyer chair and being a successful buyer at Walmart. I will tell you that I could take the vast majority of buyers that are out there, myself included, and set them as the CEO of a small company, and we will fail miserably. That's not a surprise to you guys. But where that bridge has to happen is if you're wanting to bridge your business, small business, into Walmart and become a supplier of Walmart, a new supplier there, you've got to be able to understand those differences because that buyer's thinking different. They've got different needs, different expectations, different desires. Capital sourcing is not something that a buyer at Walmart's worried about, but it's very important to you guys. So you have to transition and make that mind change because that buyer's not going to do it. We can sit here and debate whether that's right or wrong, but I'm not going to go down that path. But the reality of it is that buyer's not going to do it, so it's up to the supplier to bridge that gap and to make it. So that's my hope, is to kind of bridge some of those gaps and transitions as we go through this. So let's start with why retailers love new products. And we'll start with looking at the lens of the buyer. Because as you're coming in, you're wanting to sell to Walmart, that's who your point of contact is going to be. You're going to be talking to that buyer that is going to be making the decisions. Odds are it's going to be a line review. Sometimes it's going to be through some other forum that you're going to have that conversation. But a buyer really has three main things that they're evaluated on at the end of the year: sales, profit, and turns, or inventory, some component thereof. Those three things. Now there's a lot of other things that I'm going to evaluate my buyers on at the end of this year that are smaller components. Sustainability is a very real thing that we are going to evaluate our buyers on. Market share changes are something that is very real. We're going to evaluate our buyers on. U.S. manufacturing is something that's very real. Competencies, how they interact and how they conduct their business, is very real. But all of those things pale in comparison to the big three: sales, profit, and turns. And so if you're wanting to come in and get your new product into Walmart, sitting there with that buyer at that supplier meeting or at that line review, you've got to be able to convince that buyer and have them understand how your product is going to help one of those three components: sales, profit, or turns. Now, if it's got those other items on there as well, sustainability is a great example of that. I see a lot of sustainable products that are coming through. But if it's a sustainable product in and of itself, and that's the only leg that it stands on, it's not going to work. It has to help my sales, profit, and turns, and then it is great if it is a sustainable product as well. That's where that comes into play. So that's kind of the lens of the buyer. But now there's a lot of pressures on that buyer too. You guys have seen this. This isn't anything new. A lot of these numbers I pull from our analyst meeting that we had public last in October. So the numbers that are updated, so it might be a little bit different. The physical retail space of Walmart is changing. Physical retail space outside of Walmart is changing too, for all that goes. But Walmart is going down that path. Over the years, everybody knows our supercenters. Average square footage, 179,000 square feet. We've got thousands of these on the street today. We're going to open 60 to 70 next year. We've got Division I stores that are out there, 110,000 square feet. These are just the Walmart stores, the old school Walmart stores without grocery in it. Some will have expanded food. A little bit smaller. We're not announcing that we're going to be opening any of these. We really don't talk to it. We'll still open probably a half dozen or so where we can't open supercenters. But the one that everybody hears a lot about is neighborhood markets. Our express format, we're closing the express format concept down, moving those into neighborhood markets. We're going to open up 180 to 200 of those. All these numbers have actually been down. So if you're recognizing higher numbers earlier in the year, we have readjusted those publicly last month. And so these are accurate reflections of what's going to be happening next year now. 180 to 200 stores next year. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, Darrin, you're not telling me anything new. I see this, I can get it from anywhere. The connect the dots here is this impacts the buyer too. that buyer is worried about those sales, profit, and terms. Those are things they're going to have to go out against. And I will tell you that they are having to do it with smaller footprints, smaller shelves, smaller modulars, just smaller footprints, and that's tough. It's really tough for that buyer to start whittling down that assortment as they're going through and making these changes. Because I'll even tell you the super centers, 60, 70, that's our average on the street now is 179,000 square feet. I didn't look at the number before. I probably should have come over here to look at it I spoke with you guys about it. But I guarantee you that 179,000 square feet is not the average square footage of those 60 to 70 super centers we're opening next year. My gut's telling me it's probably going to be more like 130 to 140,000 square feet when it actually gets opened up. And so those are real compressions. Today, my oil buyer has a vast majority of 40-foot modulars. He's got 40-foot runs all across the United States. This next year, he's having to open up a lot more stores with 32 feet, 36 feet. A lot more pressure that's put on him, because where it comes into play for you guys is as you're coming into this, he's going to carry the Mobil 1 oil. He's going to carry Pennzoil. He's going to carry Quaker Stain. He's going to carry those big brands. There's less and less space for that newness. But newness comes even more important at that point, because that buyer's still got to make sales, profit, and terms. Right. He's got to make those three things, but with more pressure placed against how he's going to be able to do that. So that's where newness comes into play. So I want to talk a little bit about what is newness. And we'll spend a little time on this, but newness to a Walmart buyer is a little bit different. Of course, everybody knows the line extension. Of course, line extents, we'll go with that. A line extension. And I talk in a lot of examples, so as we go through this you can ask me questions on the business as we go through. White New. Who's used White New before? Nobody. Love it. So White New, there we go. Thank you, Steve. It makes me feel better about myself. So White New is a trim restorer in our automotive appearance category. So if you've got that faded black on your vehicle, if you got a Jeep, whatever, it's faded black on the bumpers, you can take this product on there, put that on, and it turns bright, shiny black again, and it'll last for over a year. Great product. Truly is a very good product. New product to the marketplace about 2 years ago. This product was introduced, our buyer, George Alderman, picked this up, put it out there, and with partnership between the companies, a great small company, great partnership. This became, according to MPD, the #1 appearance item in that segment that year. Huge success. Now, we can have all kinds of classes about why George Alderman picked that up. George is good. George is a very good item merchant. He's a good buyer. Not all buyers are. Be the first to admit it. I get it. I understand it. Why he picked that up? I don't know. I can't tell you why he did it. It's luck of the draw to some degree. They made a very compelling pitch, a very compelling argument as to why their item was going to help him in his category. And we'll talk more about that here in just a little bit. So, of course, if you have a new item that you bring out and it does fantastic, what do? You extend it. You make more items. That's right, because more items is better, right? So they came out this last summer, with 3 new products actually. 2 of them are on here: White New wheel and White New tire. And because of the success we had with the first one, we were much more inclined to pick up the second, the line extension. So that worked out well for us. Next, new items. This is new categories. This, as a buyer, is where we want our suppliers to play. This is the kind of newness that we're looking for. This is where you're compelling a customer to buy more stuff. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what we want to do. It's to compel the customer to buy more things, why they need to have it. That Jump and Go that's up there, that is a lithium-ion battery pack. It's a fantastic item. We retail it out for $59, about the size of this. And it will jump-start your car. The sample we have at the office, we've now jump-started 12 cars out in the parking lot without recharging it, which I was a skeptic of, to be quite honest with you. But I was proven wrong, which I love to be doing. I love that to actually happen. This actually, at the trade show, there are these now. At the trade show last week, we were in Vegas. These are everywhere from all kinds of suppliers now. We've got one of those on the modular that we rolled out 3 weeks ago, and we've got it on our gift bar in all of our stores nationwide. We were on the front side of this, and I will tell you that that item is causing that category, which is not a small category, to run triple-digit growth. it is making a real difference to that buyer's P&L right now because we were on the front side of it. That supplier had the foresight of what was coming and made a dynamic pitch to the buyer. It's new, it's a new category, it brings new customers in. It hit on all cylinders, and it's doing very, very well. You will see those everywhere next year, I guarantee it. The dash cam. Name a brand of personal camera that everybody loves to strap to themselves and go walk down the street. And where does the GoPro start at from a retail standpoint? 300, 200, cheapest one I think is 150. Huge opportunity, right? For somebody to come in with a $39 dash camera. Now, is it as good as a GoPro? No, it's nowhere near as good as a GoPro. But I'll tell you, I sold over 1,000 of those this last weekend. Because it's something that's new. It's something of that exciting to that customer. It's a different proposition. That customer or that supplier recognized the need, saw the gap of saying there's a lot of customers out there that need to get into that at a much cheaper price point. So that's something that's new from that standpoint. Not all newness, though, has to be customer-facing product. A lot of newness comes from supply chain. This is where those hidden gems come from. Because remember, sales, profits, and turns. Those last two tend to not necessarily be customer-facing. This is an item that our buyers found at the trade show last year at SEMA in Las Vegas. This is how we justify going to Las Vegas for a week. Y'all do too, don't laugh. So, this was windshield washer fluid tablets. We'll do over 100,000 oil changes each weekend when it comes to our auto care centers across the country. During those oil changes, one of the things that we will do is we will go and fill up their windshield washer fluid. So what we were doing is we were trucking gallons of washer fluid all across the country, pouring them into the big bucket that's in the back of the store, and then that's actually pumped out into a bulk tank that we actually put into the customer's car. Well, it literally had our associates taking gallons of product and pouring it into a big barrel. What this does, this actually replaces 25 gallons of that product. So now, we found this at the trade show. One of our buyers stopped at the booth and was like, what is that? And so you can imagine that when poor girl, she was very flustered whenever she figured out who she was talking to. But when she did, and God bless her, she's a great person, we absolutely love her. She had an awesome product. And it allowed us to go through, we're gonna roll this out actually everywhere next year. What it allows us to do is to now fill that bulk tank with water, dump in one roll of these, and now we're no longer shipping truckloads of gallon product across the country. Wow. Very sustainable, but very profitable. Wow. That's the key. That's why we jumped onto that one. So newness from that standpoint can come from all kinds of different things. And so it's a matter of, if there's anything that I can tell you from a newness standpoint as you're developing your products, it's all about not being Me Too items. So often, I will go through a batch of line reviews with buyers. And it's a matter of going through and seeing similar to items of what we sell today. And as a buyer, the first mindset is going to be, where am I going to source that volume from? It's going to be from the other brands that are on my shelf, which is great for that supplier. We will make a winner and we will make a loser, and it won't matter to Walmart. And that's not right. That's not right. That's not what we want to do. Our goal is to bring more customers into the space to sell more product at the end of the day. So if you've got new items as you're driving that and developing it, no Me Too items. You've got to understand very clearly where your item fits within that space. What am I doing time-wise?
You've got 15 minutes.
Awesome. Perfect. Works out perfect. So, talked about newness. What is new? How is new? What the buyer's mindset is for new. Now let's talk about how we're going to break through. How do you get your item to break through to that buyer to be something that's different? And I'll tell you, you've got to get in with that buyer. That's the first line of defense. That's who's going to be making the case. I will tell you that a lot of folks, you will hear rumors, you will hear advice, and you will get all kinds of wisdom that's out there about you need to talk to the senior directors, you need to talk to the DMMs, you need to talk to the GMMs, you need to go sit down with Doug McMillan and pitch your items. And I will I've had all that happen. I have seen it all happen. And I will tell you that it does work sometimes. And I've seen it work a couple times in the 20 years that I've worked at the company. So if that's the statistics that you're going to bet on, I'm not going to Vegas with you guys. I'm going to go back with my team. You've got to get in with that buyer, because that's where it truly, truly makes the difference. So first things first, category depending upon the business unit that you're in, whether that's going to be a 12-month process or whether that's going to be as short as a 3-month process. You've got to understand the business that you're in and what that buyer's timeline is going to be able to hit that. Timing is critical for that line review. You want to time the line review. If you come in, if the buyer's going to have line reviews, and really what that line review process is, I'll tell you, those of you that have been through it, it is a gauntlet. Different buyers handle it different ways. The majority of the buyers, what they will do is they will block off 3 weeks, and they will have back-to-back suppliers. And we will sit down for 30 minutes to an hour with each of those suppliers, looking at the line, reviewing what has happened, look at the new products, what's recommended to happen, and we move on from there. Once that time's up, you move over, you go right into the next supplier room. You actually don't book them back to back. There's a secret there. You don't book them in the same room back to back. You make it to where the buyer moves. That way you can actually get from room to room and go through there. It is truly the gauntlet, but that's where you want to be, because that's where the buyer's mindset is when they're going through those line reviews. If you're presenting a new product to them a month and a half after the line review, you're too late. You're not going to make that mod time. You're now going to have to wait until the next year when that happens. So you might be 18 months to 2 years away. If you're coming in a month and a half early, if you get a meeting somehow with that buyer a month and a half early from that line review, well, now your product's not going to be top of mind with that buyer as they're going through those line reviews and thinking through those decisions. So timing is critical. Find out when those line reviews are going to be. Sometimes you'll be able to get that from the merchandise category assistant. Sometimes you'll be able to get that from the buyer themselves. One nugget that I'll always give out, in the absence of information from Walmart, because I hear that a lot. Well, I'm asking the buyer, when are they going to do line reviews? And I just don't hear anything back. Or they tell me they don't know. It's usually not some closely guarded secret. Odds are they haven't decided yet. The absence of information usually means we don't know either when it comes down to it. So you can kind of take that as a grain of salt.
Something that's not unique to Walmart.
No.
That's everybody.
That is, absolutely. It is the mod review. Yeah, a lot of the things that I'm going to walk through here, it's a very good point there, I think. Again, it goes back to that big business, little business. When it comes to small businesses, there's so many advantages and there's disadvantages, but one of the advantages to small business is nimbleness. The ability to change on a dime, to add something in, to break down barriers and make things happen. I hate to tell you, Walmart is a bureaucracy. I mean, it's a surprise, I know, but it is a bureaucracy. We know it, we live within it, and that's those of us that are successful are the ones that are able to navigate that bureaucracy and still make things happen and to be able to be successful in spite of that bureaucracy. That's what I'm trying to help you guys through, is to figure out how to handle that. Secondly, have a clear value proposition. Research those current hot topics. A lot of times I'll go through a line review and sit down with suppliers, and we will have a pitch, talk about a product, talk about an item or a line, and I'll walk out of there not really knowing where that supplier feels that they fit. You have to understand your marketplace. You have to understand the market that you're operating in. You have to understand where your product is going to be, and you've got to understand what the value your product offers to both the end consumer, because that's the lens all of my buyers should be looking at it through, but you also have to understand to the buyer where your item fits within that space. Going back to that windshield washer fluid tablet example, it's been very easy for that supplier to come in and to have a conversation with the buyer about how we need to sell those to frontline consumers. That would not be the best place to position that product. And have to have a very clear value proposition of why that product exists. That product doesn't exist to sell to end consumers. None of you guys want to go buy a tablet for your windshield washer fluid reservoir. I guarantee it. But it was pitched more along the lines of the back shop of how it can be more like a supplier to us from a supply standpoint. That's where that product had a very clear, defined role to play within the organization and it made sense. You've got to understand that space where you play. Are you going to be going after sales? Are you going to be a top-line sales driver to drive that top line? Are you going to be a profit play? Are you going to help them with their profit? Or do you have something that's going to be different in helping me be more productive with my inventory? Are you going to help me? Because inventory is a big buzzword. There's research current hot topics. I tell you, inventory is a huge topic right now within Walmart. You're hearing it at the conference calls. You're hearing it out there in the analyst meeting. You're hearing it with a lot of things. You know, Steve and I were reminiscing about Project Impact a little bit ago of how wonderful that was. I'll tell you, there's the three basic beliefs of Walmart that Sam created. We added two since then. One was integrity for the fourth basic belief, and then there's the unofficial fifth basic belief, and that is we shall go ditch to ditch. We all believe in it, we all adhere to it, we all go by it. We will go ditch to ditch. Project Impact was one ditch. Well, we're probably over in the other ditch now, and we're going to end up going. So hopefully, we'll end up back in the middle somewhere. But nah, we'll go to the other ditch. It's more fun. So next thing on here, work on your message. When you're sitting down with that buyer, we're talking about that line review. You've got 30 minutes to an hour, depending upon when it is. You've got to make every minute count. You've got to understand, you know, each slide has to tell a message. You have to have a takeaway. You've got to have that value proposition going to that buyer for them to walk out of there. Don't worry at this point about all the things like ISO 9000 certification. Don't worry about things about your production unless that's part of your value proposition. Don't worry about those types of things. Sell your product. Because if you don't sell your product, then the other things won't matter. If you sell your product, then the buyer will find time to learn about those other things. And those can be had in meetings and conversations downstream as they're putting those things together. Very succinct and clear. And you know, I put on here each slide should have an easily discernible takeaway. Also, don't have, did I put on there? Yeah, refine your presentation. Using navigational beacons. And what I mean by navigational beacons, when you're in that meeting and you've got those takeaways from each of those slides, how many of you have ever been in a presentation with a Walmart buyer? And I don't need to raise this hand. If you've been in that meeting, you know you've got 30 minutes to give this, and you've thought about it, you're good to go, you've practiced it, rehearsed it, you're sitting there, you've got set up information on the front, you've got a 20-page deck. Okay, and as a buyer, I'll tell you, I got really good. I could walk in, I could pick up a deck, and I'd be like, 30-minute meeting, that's a 15-minute slot, that's a 50-minute deck. You get really good at that. But you're going through, you in your mind have got, all right, 20 pages, the first 15 are set up. My last 5 are the ones that count. Those are the ones that I really want to drive home with that buyer, and I want that buyer to walk out of there because that's the pitch that I'm going to make. You get into it, you start breezing through those first 15 slides because you know you've got to get through those. You've got to get through them to leave time for those 5. And what does the buyer every time do? Starts asking questions. Dang it! Why would they ask questions on slide number 3? I've got to get to slide 15. And you can tell the buyer that. No, just hush. Don't ask questions now. All will be revealed in time. But you're not going to do that. That's just not how it goes. Don't be afraid of lying those guideposts. Don't be afraid of using those navigational beacons. If you've got 5 slides at the end of the deck, some of the most successful meetings that I've been through have been whenever I sit down with that supplier, and the supplier says, hey Darrin, look, here's the deal. I've got a bunch of information I want to cover on the front side and walk you through. There's some ideas in the back couple slides that I want to get to, and I want to spend the majority of my time there. So let's get into this. What he's just done, or she has just done, is level set expectations to me, which I'm fine with, that we're going to breeze through the first half of this. Now, if I've got questions, I'm still going to stop and ask, don't get me wrong. But I'm not going to feel compelled that as we're 3/4 of the way through the deck and I'm 10 minutes into the meeting that I have to slow this down, or otherwise we're just going to sit here and stare at each other at the end of the meeting. And believe it or not, that is a real feeling that buyers do go through. If they feel like they're not asking questions, they feel like they're not adding value, that they're just sitting here just listening, and there's not a lot of value to that. They feel compelled to talk sometimes. But by laying those navigational beacons, what you've now done is you've laid the agenda for that meeting, because it's more important for you to tell your story. And it gives you a much better chance of success of telling that story within that time frame. So that's time-wise?
You got about 5 minutes.
5 minutes, good, okay. So, good, because I'm going to wrap that up from there. So, yeah, there we go. So, those are the main points for it. So we talk about newness. What is new? Why is new important? Because it's going to drive. What are the 3 main things the buyers are evaluated on? Awesome. Those are the 3 things. If you're going to bring an item to a buyer, you've got to be able to deliver on those 3 things. You've got to be able to clearly and succinctly tell that story and demonstrate why your item is going to deliver on those 3 things. And then you've got to walk them through that and walk away with a successful presentation. Seems very easy, it seems very basic, believe me, but the things I'm walking you through, trust me, I have seen many, many times. I'm walking you through experiences. So that's the message that I've got. I don't know if you want to do questions.
2 minutes.
2 minutes?
If anybody has questions they want to ask them, you got 2 minutes to do it.
Okay.
If you have a seasonal item,
Yes.
is turns really that big a deal?
Yes and no. At that point, it converts from turns to sell-through. Sell-through becomes much more of an important metric at that point in time. The buyer still will be evaluated on turns at the end of the year, just because that's mathematically how we evaluate that. There's not a sell-through component on. Sell-through is a much more shorter time frame that we're going to evaluate them on. Yes, that's a Steve.
Darrin, 2 questions. One, you said triple-digit increase in automotive, or the categories represented there. How much of that increase is new items?
Mm-hmm.
And then secondarily, on those new items, what was the common theme about cars? And was there an insight that people are keeping their cars longer?
Yes.
That caused that wipe and the jump starters and that sort of thing?
So good questions. I will tell you the industry numbers are telling you that the average car's age has continued to increase since 2008, when the car market imploded at the height of the recession. People's vehicles started being held onto longer. The average age of a vehicle today is 10.2 years it's on the street, and that's continued to grow up. There's some conversation or comments that it might actually reduce for the first time since 2008 by the end of this year. So that is driving a lot of that, to be honest with you, Steve. For newness, of what's driving a lot of the newness, like in the battery accessories example, a huge percentage of that is driving newness. I'll tell you, our gift bar that we have out there every year, we rolled it out at the beginning of November. I'm going to be directionally right, so don't quote me on the exact numbers. 32 items on that are new versus last year. The average unit retail is actually down versus last year. Our goal this year was to drive units, and we are certainly doing that with what's out there. We invested in margin, we invested in AUR, and we're driving a lot of traffic off that, and it is the new items that are causing that growth. Sir?
So you introduced a new hand cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
How many
Say we did. Are you saying say we did or we did?
Let's say you did.
Okay, got it.
Maybe you did, I don't know. Anyway, how many sales a week would you expect on a new product like that?
Very good question, and I'm not going to give you a real answer. That's okay, because it's it varies so broadly. For a hand cleaner, I really don't even have a clue. I couldn't begin to tell you what the real number would be on that. That buyer is going to look at other items within there. My recommendation to my buyers is better than what we have. That's the key. It's better than what we have. I will not hold you to a turn. Well, I will not hold you to a velocity number of what my oil guys are held to. But at the same time, I expect you to be selling more products than, say, an air filter or spark plugs. Got problems.
Well, if you're selling as much as more than your worst seller.
That's a very low bar. I told you. Achieve that.
That's good though.
If you're doing better than my worst, then I would say you marginally made me better. I'd be hoping that you're doing better than my best, because that's where you're adding value to me. Otherwise, I'm shifting. Good questions.